So I now say, and I've written on this, the question I most want an answer to, or most curious to get an answer to from an atheist: do you hope you're right, or do you hope you're wrong?
I don't really hope. I just sort of go along and just try to lead a good life, and right, I'm not hoping for anything really. I mean, if it turned out there's a God.
Yes. Would you be happy? I mean, look, there are undoubtedly people you love in your life. So if there is a God and the traditional belief there's an afterlife, you would reconnect.
Sure, I would be glad about that.
Right.
Of course.
Okay, that's all. Okay, let me tell you why I asked.
If that was the reason, if that was the version that was real, you know what I mean? People.
Well, if God is good, there's an afterlife. If God is an idiot, or God is cruel, or God doesn't give a damn about His creation, then there's no afterlife. But I make only 2 leaps of faith. It's all I make. That God exists, that God is the creator, and God is good. And if that's the case, then there's an afterlife. That's all. You can't have a good God and this totally unjust world be the only existence. That would be a cruel God. That's all.
Or an indifferent
And the
God.
only reason, by the way, I ask it is because, and I'm happy you did that, because I respect you, as you know. And I'm always puzzled if an atheist doesn't answer. Well, of course it would be nice, or of course I'd like it. It doesn't undermine your position in the least. I think it gives you credibility. That, in other words, against your desire, nevertheless, your mind has reasoned out there is no God, which is fine.
Isn't that completely consistent, though, with the things you believe? Because it's sort of that you have a curious mind. So if you found out at the end that it was a little different than perhaps you thought.
I would be curious to know, how was it done? And what is it that actually happens? This is the subject of my next book, Heavens on Earth. So I talk about the idea of uploading the mind into a computer, copying all your memories, and you get to live forever. Or how is that different really from God pulling you up out of the grave? What's He pulling up? Because most religions believe, the body stays in the grave and the soul, or the copy of you, goes to heaven. Well, if it's a copy of me, then it's not really me. And so what's actually going on there? I'd be curious to know how that works, if that's the case. And also, I do have some issues about heaven, though. I mean, is it boring? I mean, eternity is a long time, especially near the end, as somebody said. As Hitch famously said, heaven would be like celestial North Korea. I don't want a dictator that knows every one of my thoughts. So this can't be, I'm thinking of it as a human, that can't be what heaven would be like. So I don't actually even know, Dennis, what we're talking about.
Right, I don't either. Yeah. I only know that a good God figures out how to undo the terrible injustice of this life. That's it.
I'm curious, I wasn't planning on even asking this, but would you both concede that the other one could be right?
Of course he could be right. Obviously. I would only say intellectually, this has obviously nothing to do with Michael, whom I have great respect for. Intellectually, I respect agnosticism more than atheism. The certitude that implies, I don't intellectually quite understand. It's like, I don't understand a believer who never has doubts. Mm-hmm. I don't get it. So I don't understand an atheist who never has doubts.
Do you think that's a fair critique? Because we hear that a lot about atheists. Right, these days, I think we hear it more than usual.
So clarification on the term. So agnostic, technically, when Huxley coined the term, he meant unknowable. Not like you're waiting there for one more experiment or one more piece of data and then I'll make up my mind. He says it's just not knowable in any rational scientific sense. And so ontologically speaking, I'm an agnostic. We can't know. There's no experiment we're going to run. And there it is, 0.05 level of significance, God exists.
Right.
Atheist, so there's strong and weak atheism. So strong atheism, I know there's no God. That to me is an indefensible position. So weak atheism, I just don't believe in a God. I could be wrong. That's the more defensible position. So that would be my position.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of consistent with what you're saying.
Well, more so, obviously. I mean, this is not obviously the subject, but it doesn't matter. There's a great dialogue anyway. I intellectually, not emotionally, not religiously, I don't get how someone can look at the universe and think it came about on its own. I debated Lawrence Krauss on the show, who said something from nothing.
Yeah.
So at a given point in the debate, I said, so what is nothing? They said, well, nothing is something. And You know how respectfully I treat people I differ with, because you've been on the show a number of times.
Yep.
And I was respectful, but I did say something to the effect, I'm now entering a sort of voodoo land. If nothing is something, then nothing isn't nothing. You can't have it both ways.
Couldn't you have pulled some sort of rabbinical something out there?
I probably could have, but yes, right.
Much of it turns on what we mean by these words. So when a physicist like Lawrence Krauss talks about nothing, he doesn't mean it in the same way, say, a theologian might say nothing. Because there is no nothing in physics. There's always some energy field, a quantum foam field, something like this, that things pop out of. Like photons of light don't exist, and they pop out of nothing in atoms. So this already happens. Something comes from nothing. That all physicists agree, that's how light is formed. Okay, so why can't a universe do it? This is Lawrence's argument. So when he says nothing, he means something different. And I think at some point we kind of hit an epistemological wall when we talk about things like nothing, eternity, infinity. We as finite beings that are in a three-dimensional world or four-dimensional world, we can't really know what those words mean on some, say, cosmic sense. Something outside of us.
Do you think that could be just the great existential question of being a human, that we simply, we'll do this, we can go for hours if you want. We can have you guys clear out your evenings and do dinner here too. But you know what I mean? Like there's a certain amount of people in between, right? That may go, Prager's making a little sense and it'll move me that way, or Shermer's making a little sense and it'll move me that way. But that most people, at a certain point in life, you can't get them to move too far.
Right. That's why I fully admit I don't quite understand seeing the universe and concluding that on rational grounds, just rational, logical grounds, this all came from nothing, and that all the design I see implies no designer. I debated the head of American Atheists. They were a wonderful group, by the way. And I always say they gave me the check that day, which a lot of religious groups do not do. So I just want to be clear.
Yeah. Was this David Silverman?
I don't recall the name. Okay. I feel bad.
Okay.
But they had their annual convention in Minneapolis, and I debated their head. And I looked at the audience at one point, and it just struck me to ask them. It was very spontaneous. I said, how many of you, please raise your hand, if you have ever doubted your atheism? And not one hand went up.
Although they maybe were afraid to raise their hand in that community like here.
Well, all right, that's possible.
Which is an interesting point, actually.
But I made the point, though. I said, look, when a child is born with terrible deformity, every believer I know goes, where's God? So when a child is born perfectly formed, why doesn't the atheist go, wow, it doesn't seem that it's completely random.
Well, not random. It's still a wow moment for all of us.
Well, no, wow, but it's a random wow.
Not random.
Well, it's either design or random.
No. So the forces of nature are not random. The emergent property of complexity comes from simplicity by the laws of nature themselves. It's built into the system. Now you can ask, well, where are the laws of nature come from?
Well, I would ask. Yes, okay. I do ask that.
But you still have the same problem with the infinite regress argument. So if you say, well, God did it, well, where did God come from? Well, God is that which does not need to be created. Well, why can't the universe be that which does not need to be created?
Because the universe is physical and God is metaphysical.
Well, but there could be a pre-existing state. Again, we can only push back so far to the.
Well, you can only push back so far within the physical universe.
That's right.
But the idea that something outside of the physical realm made the physical realm is more coherent to me than the physical realm made itself.
Well, but there could be multiple universes.
Okay, that's the latest. Okay, that's where you lose me.
Well,
where the Dave Rubin show is happening, just like this, because there's an infinite number of universes.
Well, no, not that kind of multiple universe.
Not a better show than this. Am I better in another universe? That would be nice.
That's a toughie. That's a toughie.
But so that argument to you, that's the same thing as the Krauss argument, right? Like,
you mean the multiple universe?
Yeah.
The multiple universe is a cop-out.
No.
Because he knows better than I, because he knows more science than I. You cannot possibly ever. It's not possible for us to have contact or prove another universe. So it's a statement made that has less argument for it than the belief in God.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you said it was provable, but
no, he didn't say it. But
Yeah.
but even offering it as an argument, if that's your argument, then I have a good sound argument.
Okay, so that's not quite the argument. So first of all, dispense with the multiple universes where we're sitting here in another studio somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, I don't go for that. Okay, but the idea that there could be an eternal sequence or cycles of universes, you know, kind of a Buddhist sort of thing or Hindu sort of thing, or all the way up to what, you know, there's a half a dozen of these physical theories that are put forth by physicists. They're not like, oh, I'm an atheist, so I got to come up with something. That's not what they're doing. They're making predictions based on the mathematical principles of the universe and how these laws of nature could come about and so on. They may all be wrong. They may never even be tested. We don't know. And that's perfectly okay in science to throw those kinds of things out there and see what happens. Maybe the gravitational wave research now, that's all the thing. That may be able to detect colliding universes from, you know, that cause these gravity waves to trigger. Something like that is possible, not now, but that could make it testable. At the moment, it's not testable. So both of us end up at an epistemological wall where we can't go any further. And then now we're just using words. Well, God is that which does not need to be created and is outside of space and time. Okay, these are just words we're using. You don't know that.
No, I don't know that, but it makes
sure.
more sense than the physical world and everything in it. You and I both love music, you know, so there is no point. Bach, who I'm sure you adore, Bach, essentially the father of Western classical
this
music.
This may be the best argument for God's existence, by the way, is Bach.
Yes, yeah, that's why I'm using him.
And Anna Sophie Mutter playing the violin. Okay, so
right, and he wrote on every one of his manuscripts for the greater glory of God. Mm-hmm. So you hear this stuff, so we've gone from photons to Bach. And that's designed, but there's no designer. Why that strikes you as more logical is my puzzle.
Well, okay, so the derivative of complex ideas from simpler ideas and from big brains from smaller brains, we can see the gradation in evolution. So the chimp can't do Bach. The dog can't do Bach, or morality for that matter. So the reason we're different than, say, lions killing something and why we would call it murder and the lion wouldn't is because we have brains big enough capable of conceiving of morality, music, mathematics, logic, poetry, and so on. And that is special. Wherever the source is, we all recognize it as being transcendently special.
So we've done about 20 minutes, and we haven't really mentioned morality or what the purpose of your original video was and your counter video. Now I watched them both again this morning because I really wanted to have them fresh in my mind, and I kind of struggled with how exactly I was going to frame this because I thought, well, maybe if I just go off your video, that would be the right way because you did the counter video. Then I thought maybe I need to bounce back and forth between a few things. So I'm going to bounce around. I have a feeling that I've got two people of intellect that can follow me here. So one of the things that you talked about, so let's shift this into morality, God, and murder. So you talk about scientific facts versus moral facts. And I think people can probably figure out what that means, but can you just explain that concept again?
Well, I think everyone can understand, and I'm not saying this in a condescending way that if you don't agree with me, you're not on my level of understanding, but I think it's axiomatic that you can't learn morality from nature. Nature, especially if you believe in the survival of the fittest, if that's your guideline, and that was a guideline for people like Hitler, that he actually did say that, but even dropping any reference to a given mass murderer, science doesn't tell me to be honorable. Science doesn't tell me to do anything against my self-interest. The selfish gene written by an atheist, that we're composed of selfish genes. You need a mind, and you need, I believe, an outside source to say this is what is right, this is what is wrong, because science doesn't tell you that. That's all. I don't even think that's debatable. How do I know not to steal because of atoms or biology? I don't think you do.
Well, your moral conscience tells you that. And where did that come from? Okay, so let's pull back for a second. So your video opened up, is murder wrong? okay, what is murder? Let's define some terms here to get us some clarification. Murder is the wrongful killing of one human by another. So it's like asking, is wrong wrong? Yes, it's right there in the word. So maybe we mean, is killing wrong?
No, we meant is murder. I meant is murder wrong.
Well, by definition, it's wrong. It's
right.
Like, it's yes, like
by definition.
Right.
But that's not the issue. My video is not is why is murder wrong, not whether it is wrong.
Yeah.
Why is it wrong?
Yeah. Why is it wrong? Because we've defined it that way.
Okay, but so that's my argument.
Yes, but
my argument is that's the whole point. If we've defined it that way, then we are God, and we could say murder blacks, murder Jews, murder gays, right?
No, no, because of, okay, so two things. One, first of all, if you say that, well, it's God that told us that it's wrong.
Yeah.
All right, so first of all, did God have reasons for why murder is wrong, or is he just randomly declaring this and that wrong or right? My guess is you'd say he had reasons. And so the question is, what are those reasons, and why not skip the divine middleman and just base our moral reasoning on those reasons that we too can come up with?
Moral reasoning, because I wish it worked. Because my bottom line is, I just want people to do good.
Yes.
If atheists, okay. I'm much closer to a good atheist than a bad religious person. Mm-hmm. So my bottom line is goodness. But I realized at a very young age that reason doesn't take me to goodness. Reason is a tool. Reason is a hammer. Hammers build hospitals, and hammers build torture chambers.
Yes.
So reason is great, but it doesn't give you the goal. Reason gives you the means.
Okay, but to pull back, how do you know that murder is wrong from the divine command theory, your perspective? I mean, you said you don't talk to God, you're not...
Right, I believe in revelation. I do believe the Ten Commandments were revealed.
Okay, so, again, as you know, Plato refuted this argument 2,500 years ago. If God is just declaring things randomly, then if he didn't say murder was wrong, would that make it okay?
Well, to be consistent, it would be, but he didn't do that, so it's irrelevant. It's like there's an old Yiddish saying: "If my grandmother had balls, she'd be my grandfather."
Yes.
Right. Okay, so this is not an if that matters. It turns out that moral reasoning and what God is dictating seem to coincide very often. But that's not the issue. Remember, my issue is beyond what we're speaking about. There is no, forgetting murder for a moment, there is no good and evil if there is no God. There are only opinions about good and evil, just like beauty. Do you think there's an objective beauty?
I think there's a basis to it, yes.
What does that mean?
There's an evolved propensity to prefer some characteristics in people and landscapes.
All right, but it doesn't make something beautiful, objectively speaking.
Okay, but what do you mean by objective?
Objective, that it has just this, objectively, this cup, this glass exists.
So it's not just
it's not
your
my
opinion
opinion.
and my opinion. That's
correct.
Right. Okay, so I think moral values actually have a factual basis that are like the glass. A little more complicated, but based on our human nature so you mentioned the selfish gene. We do have our inner demons that cause us to want to be selfish and greedy and avarice and so forth. But we also have our better angels. That is, it pays to be cooperative, nice, altruistic, and caring and loving for other human beings, particularly those in your tribe. And it benefits your selfish genes to be nice to other people. Now, immediately in your immediate family, extended family, and your community, and studies show this does pay off. Now, unfortunately, we're very tribal to other people who may be threatening our empathetic notions about our fellow beings. But that's an evolved characteristic. We can see it in primates, in children, and so on. There's a deep sense from the moment you're born of there's a right and a wrong. And that comes from this evolved propensity to survive in a social community. You can't survive by murdering, cheating, lying, and so forth. And so that's where it comes from. And I consider that to be transcendent of you and me. It's not my opinion, it's not your opinion. It belongs to the species. We're born that way. Lions don't have that. Chimps don't quite have that like we have it, and so on. There's a scale of this. So one of my favorite videos from Franz de Waal is the two little capuchin monkeys that are each taught to swap a pebble for a grape or a cucumber slice. So the pebbles are like money. So so you see this video where the experimenter gives the one a pebble, he gives it back, and he gets a cucumber slice, he eats it, he's happy. Then the other one does the same thing, and he gets a grape. Now, they like grapes better than cucumbers, because who doesn't? And so the other one, the first one, sees that. He goes, oh boy, I'm going to get a grape. And he runs and gets his pebble, and he puts the pebble, and the experimenter gives a cucumber slice, and he's like, and you see him, and he throws it at the experimenter, and he's pounding on the cage, he's rattling the cage wall. He is pissed because that guy got something I didn't get. That was not right. I did the same amount of work that he did, and he got something. So you can see that sense. They don't have language, they can't call it anything, but they have a sense of wrong. I was wrong. That was not fair.
Okay, so let me respond.
Yeah.
That experiment does not show what you just said. That experiment shows that he's pissed on his behalf. You find me one monkey on the face of the earth that rattles the cage because the other guy was wronged, then I will take that argument seriously.
Actually,
this is completely selfish-based. Number two, you mentioned children. So you have raised...
Not okay. Yes, it is selfish-based, but it's about what's right and wrong, what's fair.
For me. No.
Right.
So it's not about right and wrong. It's about me. I feel gypped. That doesn't count.
But
they don't rattle cages on behalf of other monkeys.
No, it's a sense of fairness. Like, I want what's right for me.
Yes, for me.
And then, okay,
but I don't want what's right for you, fair for you.
So what does it take for us to scale up for me to care about what's right for me, to care about what's right for you?
It takes transcendent morality. It doesn't take selfish genes. Take children. You mentioned children.
Yes.
The idea that we could learn that children are born with a strong moral sense. I mean, you've read Lord of the Flies. I think that's far more accurate. Let me just ask you a question. You raised a child, right? And so I just want to ask you, how many times do you feel, roughly, you told her, say thank you? 10,000?
No, not that many times.
No?
I think you just have to nudge him a little bit.
Nudge him a little bit.
Yeah,
oh, please.
But the
All
research,
right.
on child development shows that...
I told my sons, at each of them, at least 10,000 times in their life, say thank you. If they were inherently good, they would, first of all, never have to be told the first time.
Dennis, not
and certainly not many other times.
Not black and white. They're all good or they're all evil. No.
But don't say we can learn that we have this great built-in sense.
We
then
do.
Why did the world stink?
Okay, read Paul
The world
Bloom's
is
book.
filled. Why is slavery universal? Rape universal? Murder universal.
Well, we know
goodness is rarer than all of these terrible things.
But it's been changing, and there's a reason for that, and the reason is reason. Ever since the Enlightenment, we've been changing the conditions of society, politics, economics, and social systems to emphasize the better angels and sort of attenuate the inner demons. Mm-hmm. And we know how to do this. It's sort of like a behavioral game matrix. Like, okay, we got to increase.
So if we had this debate 200 years ago, right before the Enlightenment, you would have agreed with me?
I probably would have been religious, and we probably would have been on the same page on pro-slavery and so forth.
Well, I do think this is an interesting point, because when I had you on just a couple months ago, and you were arguing for morality through a Judeo-Christian value, a lot of people were saying to me, he's actually just arguing for Enlightenment values, which I thought was...
I think so. I think that's the case.
No.
I think your beliefs have been influenced by the Enlightenment very much.
I can't answer you. I having been raised in my specific case, which is it's truly irrelevant to the point, but in my specific case, I assure you, I was raised in an Orthodox Jewish milieu. Half the day Hebrew studies in Hebrew of the Bible and the Talmud and so on, and half the day secular studies. If I would have said to one of my rabbis from Eastern Europe, the French Enlightenment, he would have looked around and, was that the name of a new I don't know, well, not rock group. He didn't follow rock groups.
Right.
But anyway, he would have thought maybe it was a food, French Enlightenment.
Right. But that might have showed the limitations of his thinking, though.
Yes, I agree with you, but that's not the point. The point is, what influenced me more? I don't know. I believe that God wanting to me good, God demands that I be good, is the single most animating thing in my life. And I want it to be the most animating thing in everybody's life. I don't trust people who listen to their inner voice. a handful of occasions it will work. For the vast majority of people, the inner voice will be, if a young man can get away with grabbing a woman, the inner voice will be dwarfed by his testosterone.
So, all right, so that it's a good segue to two things. So first, I just want to jump back to the monkey example here for a second. Because do you think it's possible that if they kept doing that experiment over time, the monkey who was seeing his friend be wronged would eventually start protesting on behalf of the monkey? Because I think that would strengthen that argument. I don't know that they...
Okay, so Franz de Waal's research shows that you can nudge it in that direction. Not very far. So he does research with elephants and other mammals, and you can get them to. You can see that they start to care for the other individual if they're being harmed, like they're getting electric shocks. If they do something that sacrifices themselves to stop the electric shock.
Right, but you use the grape and the cucumber. The day a monkey starts rattling the cage because his friend got a cucumber, not a grape, I will be impressed.
Yes, okay. Well, okay. So, and then also read Paul Bloom's book, Just Babies. So they show that like these little things with the infants, they can't speak yet. Okay, so but they're doing these little puppet things, and they have a puppet show where the one puppet is trying to push this ball up a ramp, and another puppet comes in and pushes him back down, and he fails, or the other puppet comes up and helps him, right? So then they show the babies, they get to pick which puppet they like the most, and they always like the one that helped.
Right.
And so Bloom's got these great videos where you can see a lot of times these little babies will reach out and slap the bad puppet. It's like that puppet was bad. So this is at like 6 months, a year old, year and a half. They already have a sense of that's right and that's wrong. Helping is good, harming is not good. Okay. Now, so we don't need to go from there to say, well, then how do you explain evil? It's in there. We have inner demons. We also have better.
Right, and I think that's true. I think that there are good sides.
Now, you might say, well,
God
put it in there, but to get back to my earlier point, how do you know? So you said Revelation, but you mean the Bible, the Old Testament. Okay, so but other religious leaders, like the leader of ISIS, Baghdadi. So he says, I get revelation from God. I know what's right and wrong.
Right. So I have an answer to that. Yeah. I have an answer, and I'm curious to hear your answer, because I've heard this a lot, and it's a plausible argument. How do you know which God, for example? Okay, if I came along and I developed a brown bubbly drink and said this is Coca-Cola. And you would say, well, there really is a real Coca-Cola. You are making up something new, well beyond, chronologically, the original Coca-Cola. It's your recipe. It doesn't taste like it. It doesn't look like it. And you don't have the same ingredients, but you're calling it Coca-Cola. God was introduced to humanity by the Old Testament. That everybody acknowledges. All right? That's the God I'm talking about. If there are variations on that theme, that's their business. There is a Coca-Cola. And I'm talking about Coca-Cola. I'm talking about the God given to humanity through the Old Testament. That God gave the Ten Commandments, in my view, and that made murder absolutely wrong, not dependent upon personal or societal opinion.
So what about right before that happened?
Right before that happened, there were people who thought... 2 days before, there were a lot of people who thought murder was wrong. Of course that's true. But it wasn't objectively wrong, it was subjectively wrong, and there's a big difference. I am now telling you, God says, that that killing wrongly is absolutely wrong. There is an objective morality here.
Are you talking, which commandment are you talking about here?
The 6th.
So this is thou shalt not kill.
No, murder. The Hebrew and the English are murder, not kill.
Okay, so but again, back to my original point. By definition, it's wrong.
I know that.
We're really talking about killing.
But
wrongful killing.
Right, wrongful killing.
But some killing is okay.
Of course it is. Yes, of course that's true.
Right.
Some sex is okay, some sex is rape.
Right.
That's true about every action.
All right, so how much of this then to you is the micro versus the macro? Because I sense you're actually conceding a little bit of ground in that you don't think that Michael is going to murder anyone, but that you think that for society as a whole, so that his atheism...
That's right, because
his atheism is okay, but for society as a whole...
What is the legal statement? Bad cases or exceptional cases make bad law, whatever it is. Of course there will be individuals... So look, my favorite analogy, seatbelts save lives. Is that a generalization? It is true. Is it true in every single case? Of course not. Sometimes you die because you wore a seatbelt that choked you, you couldn't get out of a burning car or whatever. So if there are two people, one, they're both moral. Michael Shermer's moral, this guy's moral. The guy who thinks God will judge him for his behavior, I trust in the final analysis more than the person who only has to answer to his own conscience. I am not a big believer in humanity.
Unless the guy says Allahu Akbar just before he
You're
tells
right.
you.
You're right. That's not the God I'm talking about.
But
So
if we had an imam here,
so then, all right, so fine. So then I'll give you. So Mao Zedong was an atheist. I didn't saddle you with Mao. Mao killed 80 million people.
Well,
But you address that in your video, don't you? That what they had replaced with religion was a different ideology.
Yes, was an atheist religion.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
But that's
Well,
another
not
issue.
an atheist religion.
Communism was an atheist religion.
Well,
of course it was.
But that's not. People don't kill in the name of atheism. They kill in the name of some economic ideology.
Or whatever, right? Or racist, or I understand that. Doesn't matter, though.
Yeah.
You first had to get rid of God.
I'm not saddling you.
If you believed in God, Mao killed you.
No, I don't want to saddle you with the ISIS thing. I'm just saying, if we had an imam here and he said, well, we believe in Revelation also, and ours came in the 7th century, and you know.
Yes, that's fine. Okay. So I'm telling you that the God that you and I are talking about was revealed in the Old Testament. That's the God we're talking about. That another man makes another claim, may he live and be well, it is irrelevant to my argument.
Okay.
Okay, there are people who believe God has 12 heads and is a turtle. I can't deal with that. I'm just dealing with the God who gave the 10 Commandments.
Okay, but so that though, how then do you square the people? I mean, remove the 3 monotheistic religions, and I'm not talking about the guy that believes in a turtle with 12 heads, but just other religions. Just other, polytheistic religions that have existed for a long time that do have a basis in morality.
Or Buddhism,
Hinduism,
yes,
Hinduism,
and I think it's terrific where I don't think that the Buddha would have argued that morality is objectively real. I've studied Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhism scholar, but he sought inner enlightenment. The Buddhist project is not to make the world moral. It is to have the individual transcend his ego. And there's great value in that, but it's a different aim.
So what do you think about the micro versus macro
Yeah,
thing? Because
I
know you pretty well, and I'm pretty sure this thing's not going to end with you murdering the two of us.
Hopefully.
But I do think there's some legitimacy to the argument that on a societal whole, if everyone just starts listening to the thing in there, people are kind of wacky and are going to do crazy things. And we have evidence because we've already just mentioned ISIS and all kinds of other things.
That's right.
So what do you think about that? It's the small, the individual versus the collective.
It's a perfect point. So you and I are both fans of the Founding Fathers and the Constitution and so on, and we were just talking about the Hamilton biography and what a genius this guy was, Jefferson, and so on. I don't think they were channeling Moses or Jesus of the Old Testament. They were channeling Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, Aristotle, all the great philosophers who came before that thought, what's the best way to structure a society that we attenuate the inner demons and accentuate the better angels? All right, we need 3 structures, 3 judicial. I'm sorry,
branches of government.
3 branches of government. Sorry,
we don't really use them anymore. That's why it's not on the tip of your tongue.
We need a Supreme Court, and we need local court. We need a rule of law. We need a police, military. So basically, all that was a sort of a science or technology of social structure. How can we do this? Because people will act on their own best self-interest. That's why we need checks and balances and so on. And that didn't happen in very many places in the world, and historically, only a couple of times has that happened. So it's a unique experiment, and in a way, the social contract, let's call it that, is a transcendent, objective form of moral, legal, social system by which we're going to live so that we all flourish and survive and flourish and have a more moral lives. And it works pretty well, even though, like in your seatbelt example, doesn't always work, but it works better than all the other systems. And to me, it feels transcendent in the sense it's not my opinion, it's not your opinion. These guys set this up. It's been tweaked and tweaked and tweaked. It's like an experiment. That's why Jefferson called what we're doing an experiment a lot. He said, we're running the experiment. Tweak the variables, have another election. Tweak the variables. The Supreme Court says, no, we're going to do this, that, let's change that. That, to me, feels objective in the sense of it's outside of me and you. It's not just opinion.
Right. I don't know why it feels objective, because they were opinions. They were great opinions. We both adore these people, but they were opinions. I just have to take issue, though, and this this one is not this, contrary to everything else we spoke about, this is not an opinion issue. This is a factual question. And I just factually disagree. Every single one of the founders, except for Thomas Paine, was a God-centered person who believed that without God, the American experiment would not work. Washington said it in his famous inaugural address, or his farewell address, I should say, where I'm paraphrasing. He is a fool who thinks that we can have a moral society without religion. Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. We are endowed by our Creator. Because if the Creator doesn't endow us with inalienable rights, there aren't inalienable rights.
Well, of course, as you know, Jefferson was a deist, not really a...
No, but wait, deist in those days is not what deist today means. You believed in a Creator and that ended the issue. They all believed in a providential God who interfered in human events. Benjamin Franklin, in his autobiography, wrote, "I believe in a God who works in history and who judges all people, and in a hereafter." Franklin and I have the same exact theology. He wasn't an Orthodox Christian. Most of them were not. That's true. But they were all God-centered, and the God was the God of the Bible.
So you can separate that sort of God-centered view that they had from the fact that they very clearly wanted a separation of church and state.
That's a separate issue.
And they feared the overreaching power, not only of government, but of religious theocracy.
But they had a bigger fear in a society that would abandon God as the root of rights and human worth. That was as big a fear as any.
So do you
and by the way, separation of church and state, and we all know, but it's worth just noting, is in one letter that Jefferson wrote. It's not in the Constitution or anything else.
Actually, one of my favorite moments in the Hamilton biography is where he's later asked, "How come you didn't put God in the Federalist Papers in the Constitution?" And he said, "I forgot." And then turn out the biographer goes, "This from a man who never forgot anything. He didn't forget it." Because it's not an argument. You can't make an argument to your fellow politicians or whatever you're trying to campaign.
It was this supposition of the founders that people would believe that rights came from religion and that the Bible would be the moral educative tool of their children. Lincoln rarely went to church, had a Bible on his nightstand, and everyone says he read it every day.
Well, why do you think they put in endowed by our Creator then? Do you think it was just sort of a linguistic trick in a way to...
I think it's language they put in just to kind of reinforce the point, like putting in God we trust on the money, which was done in the 50s to counter the atheism of communism. And I think also, to your point, I think there was a sense in the Founding Fathers that we can't police everybody. It's a big, open country. We can't have, policemen on every corner and so on. It would be good if everyone had an internal policeman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Well, I don't think we need that anymore in the sense that now we have
we're better? People are kinder today?
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
the American experiment is unraveling.
I don't think so.
Fine. You have more optimism about what's happening in the country.
You should be super optimistic. The Republicans are running the show.
Yeah,
so
but
I don't think they're.
I think you have bigger fears related to maybe media.
Okay, that's a separate.
That's a whole other thing.
Look, all I know is 50% of kids, according to Pew, do not believe in free speech. For hate speech.
I think that's a problem. We already agree on that. Yeah.
Okay, I know we agree. That's my point.
Yes.
I think that the American Revolution is being undone. Equality is supplanting liberty. The French Revolution is defeating the American Revolution.
All right, you know what? Let's hold that to the end, because I think that's where we can all sort of come around and tie this nicely